Now, I'm not one to gossip, but I will serve you the tea. You know what time it is? Welcome to Chronicle Speaks. So it's very seldom that a lawsuit shocks me because it seems like everyone in Hollywood has been getting hit with lawsuits left and right. But I'm going to tell you this, Donnie McClurkin definitely was not on my bingo card to be next. Out of all of the gospel artists out there, he's one that I could always listen to. But at the same time, the truth matters, and loving someone's music doesn't mean we ignore real allegations when they come forward. So this story forces us to confront something uncomfortable, like how do you separate the artist from the man? Now, we all know that Donnie has been very open about his struggles with homosexuality. He's talked about it in his interviews, in his sermons, and even his books.
I know this is not talk you hear from the pulpit, but the young people need to know I walked and I tried to find myself through other men in the church. You have no idea how many times I gave myself away trying to find myself. Just trying to feel loved because my daddy didn't cover me. Just trying to feel loved because I didn't have a man to show me what love was. And the only man that loved me lusted me when I was 8, and that's all I knew to look for.
And he's built a ministry around the whole idea of being delivered. And for a lot of people, that honesty made them trust him even more. But that's also what makes this lawsuit so complicated, because the allegations aren't about private feelings. They're about power, control, and consent. Now, according to this lawsuit, the plaintiff says he came to Donnie as a young man who was confused about his sexuality and deeply rooted in his faith. He says he was looking for a spiritual guidance, not intimacy, and he claims that Donnie used spiritual authority to cross boundaries that should never have been crossed. Donnie got on Facebook Live yesterday, and he says that everything is a flat-out lie. Me personally wanted him to say,
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Well, he can't really say woman, but you get the gist. If this man came to the church seeking help and y'all ended up in a relationship, did you really help him? Him just saying that it's a lie could mean I touched him, but he wanted me to. I don't know. We're going to break down this lawsuit, and then we'll also get into Donnie's response. But before we do, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any news regarding this story and so much more. Now let's get back into it. Now, the plaintiff was 21 years old when he said he met Donnie McClurkin in 2003 after reading McClurkin's book about being delivered from homosexuality. Now, during that time, he says McClurkin became his spiritual mentor. Then he hired him as his personal assistant. Then he used religion and deliverance sessions to essay him. Now, with the lawsuits that we've broken down on this channel, you know, a few of them use the Gender Motivated Violence Protection Act, and this lawsuit is no different. What that means is the plaintiff isn't just saying something bad happened. They're saying that the defendant used power, control, and sexualized behavior against them because of their gender. The law treats that kind of abuse the same way the law treats hate crimes. It turns into a civil rights violation, not just a personal dispute. So instead of this being about he said, she said, or workplace drama, it becomes about whether the defendant used sexual power, intimidation, or exploitation to dominate or harm someone. And that's a much bigger deal, because if a jury believes it, the damages don't have a cap. We're talking millions, punitive damages, and permanent reputational damage. So let's get into this lawsuit. Facts common to all causes of action. That on or about August 3rd, 2003, when plaintiff Corletto was 21 years old, he first met defendant McClurkin at defendant's church in Long Island, New York, after reading defendant's book entitled Eternal Victim, Eternal Victor, which centered on being delivered from homosexuality. Now, at that time, defendant's church, Perfecting Faith Church, was holding outdoor services referred to as Church Without Walls, where individuals would share testimonies regarding their own deliverance from homosexuality, prostitution, drugs, and other circumstances. Because plaintiff was struggling with the acceptance of his sexuality in light of his religious belief, he sought out defendant McClurkin for guidance. That after the service on or about August 3rd, 2003, plaintiff was brought to meet defendant McClurkin, who prayed with him and assured him that defendant would help deliver him from homosexuality. Shortly thereafter, one of defendant's ministers, who confessed to plaintiff that he too was struggling with his homosexuality, began persistently contacting plaintiff, showing up to plaintiff's home unannounced, and even making sexual advances towards plaintiff. So let's just stop for a second. If that part of the lawsuit is true, it still raises an important question. How does someone serve in a ministry focused on helping others with a struggle they're still also dealing with themselves? That's not automatically wrong, but it does create a sensitive power dynamic. When someone is both a spiritual leader and a fellow struggler, boundaries become extremely important because people coming for help are vulnerable, and any blurred lines can quickly turn into manipulation or exploitation, and that's what Corletto is saying happened. Now, continuing with the lawsuit, due to this harassment, plaintiff, who had only attended defendant's church for about 3 weeks at this point, began missing church services and considered leaving altogether. Now, shortly thereafter, plaintiff received a call directly from defendant McClurkin, where defendant reassured that this harassing minister was being dealt with, and that was a test from God in which plaintiff passed. Plaintiff and defendant McClurkin then developed a mentor-mentee relationship. Eventually, defendant offered plaintiff the position of executive personal assistant, which plaintiff accepted. During plaintiff's time as defendant McClurkin's personal assistant, they engaged in Pray the Gay Away spiritual sessions, during which defendant McClurkin groped plaintiff Johnson, all without his consent. Plaintiff struggled to process these incidents as SA, as defendant was both his mentor and employer, making it difficult for him to speak out about the abuse he had suffered. During this time, defendant McClurkin would set up scenarios with plaintiff and other men, much like with the aforementioned minister, framing them as tests from God to see how plaintiff would react. One such test came when plaintiff and defendant were staying at the Atlantis Resort in Nassau, Bahamas, where defendant invited a male model to plaintiff's hotel room in an attempt to coerce plaintiff into sexual activity. When plaintiff reported to defendant that he was able to resist the male model's sexual advances, defendant praised him, laid his hands on plaintiff, and told him that he passed another test. In 2007, plaintiff traveled with defendant McClurkin and his family to California for a business trip. Defendant also brought his, at the time, girlfriend. Therein, in defendant McClurkin's hotel room, defendant instructed plaintiff to remove defendant's shoes. Defendant McClurkin then removed his pants, exposed himself to plaintiff, grabbed him, pulled him onto the bed, and forcefully kissed and groped plaintiff's body. Plaintiff cried and pled for defendant McClurkin to stop, but defendant McClurkin continued touching him in an attempt to excite his Johnson. Defendant McClurkin then forcefully grabbed plaintiff's Johnson and performed services of the mouth on him, all without plaintiff's consent. Plaintiff begged defendant McClurkin to stop while crying, but defendant continued to essay him. Defendant McClurkin then forcefully grabbed plaintiff Johnson and inserted it in his touch me not, thereby forcing plaintiff to engage in touch me not with defendant until defendant released. Now, when plaintiff confronted defendant McClurkin afterwards, defendant pretended to have no recollection of the SA and blamed his behavior on side effects of his medication. Defendant McClurkin further manipulated plaintiff, blaming him for the incident and convincing him that he was the sole culpable party. As a result, plaintiff experienced intense shame and confusion. Defendant McClurkin exploited the tactic repeatedly, coercing plaintiff into further unwanted SA over the next 6 years. Defendant McClurkin also engaged in numerous other incidents of groping and forcible touching while plaintiff was working for him at his church. Defendant would secretly grope plaintiff before going to preach, inducing plaintiff to cry and then using plaintiff's tears to encourage other congregants to openly express emotion. During this period, in about 2007, defendant McClurkin took plaintiff on another business trip to Atlantic City, New Jersey for a speaking engagement. Thereat, defendant claimed the hotel had mistakenly booked only one room and eventually persuaded plaintiff to stay in the same room as him. Therein, while plaintiff slept on the couch, he awoke to defendant McClurkin performing services of the mouth on him, all without plaintiff's consent. On another occasion, in or about 2007, defendant McClurkin forced himself on plaintiff in a hotel room located in Long Island, New York, under circumstances similar to those in the previous California incident. On another occasion, in or about 2008, defendant McClurkin forced himself on plaintiff at defendant's home in Rockville Center, New York, and excited himself in front of plaintiff and forced plaintiff to watch. On another occasion, in or about 2008, defendant McClurkin drove plaintiff to a park in Rockville Center, New York, under the pretense of going grocery shopping. Therein, defendant then forced plaintiff to perform services of the mouth on him until he finished. On another occasion, in or about 2008, at a hotel in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, New York, defendant McClurkin forced himself onto plaintiff, forcefully kissing plaintiff and groping his Johnson. Plaintiff tried to leave, but the door was locked. Therein, defendant McClurkin performed services of the mouth on plaintiff and then forced plaintiff's Johnson into his sun don't shine while pinning plaintiff against the wall. During this period, plaintiff attempted to quit on multiple occasions. Defendant, however, denied plaintiff's request, further coercing him to stay by telling plaintiff that his deliverance and purpose were tied to defendant. Defendant McClurkin compared plaintiff to the biblical figures of Elijah and Elisha to further manipulate him and convince him that he needed defendant. And if you don't know, Elijah was a powerful prophet and God chose Elisha to be his successor. Now, Elijah symbolically passed his authority to Elisha by throwing his mantle over him, and Elijah followed him as a student and servant for years. When Elijah was taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire, Elisha witnessed it and received a double portion of his spirit. Now, I would have personally told Donnie, I don't need any more portions of your spirit. I've received enough. Thou shalt not portion me any further. Portion me not. Consider me unportionable. Now, going further with the lawsuit, plaintiff also confided in church staff members about defendant McClurkin's misconduct and abuse, including Renee Mentor-Carr, Shavetta Green, and Terrell Middleton regarding defendant's misconduct, but no action was taken. In 2008, plaintiff ultimately secured employment with a Christian broadcasting network in New York and successfully resigned from his position with defendant McClurkin. However, because defendant McClurkin was a gospel artist, plaintiff continued to encounter him through his new employment. In April 2012, plaintiff began working for an airline. During training in Orlando, Florida, defendant discovered plaintiff's hotel location through one of plaintiff's friends and appeared uninvited at plaintiff's hotel room. Thereat, defendant McClurkin begged plaintiff to allow him, stating that they needed to talk. Plaintiff, not wanting to make a scene, given defendant's celebrity status and public recognition, reluctantly agreed to let defendant inside his room. Therein, defendant McClurkin begged plaintiff to have intimacy with him one last time, but plaintiff refused. Later, while plaintiff slept, he awoke to defendant McClurkin, exciting himself also while touching and groping plaintiff's body. Therein, plaintiff resisted defendant McClurkin's advances, but defendant McClurkin forced himself on top of plaintiff and began performing services of the mouth on him, ignoring plaintiff's repeated verbal refusals. Therein, plaintiff cried as defendant McClurkin proceeded to SA him. In the following months, defendant McClurkin persistently pressured plaintiff to live with him in California. After this, around Thanksgiving or Christmas of 2013, while plaintiff was living in Boston, Massachusetts, defendant McClurkin showed up outside the gate at the airport with two of plaintiff's friends and refused to leave until plaintiff agreed to go out with them. Thereafter, plaintiff hesitantly accepted and was ultimately coerced by defendant McClurkin into staying with him in a hotel room afterwards. Defendant again forcefully touched and groped plaintiff's Johnson, all without his consent. In or about June of 2013, defendant McClurkin persuaded plaintiff to rejoin his church in New York. On June 26, 2013, defendant McClurkin then convinced plaintiff to accompany him on a trip to Niagara Falls, New York, where defendant forced himself on plaintiff and SA'd him in defendant's hotel room, ignoring plaintiff's pleas for him to stop. This time, plaintiff was able to push defendant off, having grown more confident in his sexual identity and no longer subscribing to defendant's doctrine of deliverance. After this incident in Niagara Falls, New York, on June 28, 2013, defendant McClurkin sent plaintiff an email apologizing for SAing him that evening. In the email, he said, "My apology. The first thing I want to do is apologize again to you. I know I apologize for my wrong attitude from Wednesday, but I want to apologize for all my behavior that has been wrong and put you in a wrong place. I am the actual epitome of a desperate, dirty old man, pining and groping a young man who is just looking for a friendship and close platonic relationship with someone he once looked to for help, guidance, and spirituality. I was trying to go to a realm of sexuality that wasn't right and wasn't right for you, or me for that matter. I feel so foul, so stupid. I'm old enough to be your father and want to be someone else to you. You don't have that desire for me, and I shouldn't have it for you. I forced myself on you, groping on you, and when I think about it, you never really touched me like that at all, and just wanted to sleep together and hug occasionally. I'm really embarrassed at how I am and how I acted. You're far too important to be treated like that from me or anyone. I'm not helping you in any way by doing this, and I'm only making a fool out of myself being so desperate. I have no one.
I'm gonna probably be alone for the rest of my life as far as our mate is concerned.
And I feel it more than ever, but I was horribly wrong trying to force you into something that you were constantly saying no to. I'm too old to be like this. I won't be that to you again. You didn't come back for this. My loneliness is mine to deal with. My desire for you is not right in the way that I'm feeling and handling it. I will be a friend to you and pastor, if you'll allow me, but I won't be this broken old man so desperate for you that I violate my purpose in your life and become this. I love you and want you to be who you're supposed to be. I will work on me. I hate being lonely and alone, but I have to go through it. And not like this. Let's move on from this here. See you later. This or next week. Pastor. Now, in November 2015, while plaintiff was experiencing mental health struggles, he returned to defendant McClurkin's church seeking guidance. Therein, defendant McClurkin engaged in further essay against plaintiff, taking advantage of plaintiff's vulnerability and currently fragile mental state. Now, if this case does go to trial, a jury will decide whether the alleged conduct qualifies as gender-motivated violence, SA, and S battery under New York law. Now, if the jury believes the plaintiff, the defendant could face substantial financial damages, punitive damages, and long-term reputational consequences, even though this is a civil case and not a criminal case. So in a statement from January 7th, Donnie McClurkin says, with all humility, faith, and deep respect for Christ and this global gospel music and ministry community, which has shaped my life, my calling, and my character, I address this letter. Many of you are aware of the profane allegations of SA, rape, and coercion that have been recently lodged against me. I want to state clearly and unequivocally that these allegations are contrived and untrue. I understand the weight of such false claims, especially in our community rooted in faith, trust, and the teachings of Jesus Christ. An essay in any form is a real and painful reality for many and not to be used frivolously. True survivors deserve to be heard, protected, and supported. At the same time, the truth matters, and the truth has not been told. And though I know many have already formed their opinions based on initial belief and controversy, as we are apt to do with something of this false nature, I ask that this community exercise patience and trust in God's timing for the truth to fully come to light. I have always sought to conduct myself with integrity, transparency, godly care, and responsibility in the fulfillment of my Christian life and duties. This accusation of salacious engagement or any misconduct that harmed, exploited, or took advantage of anyone and misused my position, leadership, or influence in any way in these false accusations is emphatically untrue. My love for and walk with Christ means everything to me and is deeply sensitive and sacred. I live to please Him, which is why it is essential that the facts be established carefully, responsibly, and fairly. Although I have not yet been served with the official legal complaint, I am proactively cooperating fully with the appropriate processes and will vigorously defend to the fullest against this defamatory and baseless lawsuit. I am confident that when the truth is fully known, I will be vindicated. Please pray for the accuser as well. Seriously and sincerely, I thank everyone for their continued prayer, support, and faith. God bless you all. It's gonna get better after a while. Sincerely in Christ, Donnie McClurkin.
And I just wanted to address something personally. You've heard a lot that's been going on. You've heard many different accusations lodged and alleged. You've heard some very untrue things. And you've also seen an official statement that I put out. But I wanted to lend my voice and my face to this. And I wanted to let you know that I thank God for every one of you praying for me and for the support. And I thank God for truth, which you have not heard. You have not heard the truth, but you will. But I just didn't want to go any longer without addressing it. I've remained silent while this campaign, this media campaign was launched. I've remained silent because the Bible tells you to be slow to speak. Slow to speak, quick to hear, and slow to anger. And so I had to sit back and I had to pray because there are people that look for this to be true. There are people that have already formed their opinion based on the strategic approach of defamation that's gone forward. But I just want to let you all know from my mouth to you, from my heart to yours, that it's unfortunate that I'm trying to be delicate, It's unfortunate that such allegations have been lodged. I don't understand the machinations of the young man's mind. He's not young, really. He's 40-some odd years old. But I haven't seen this fellow in over, well, now it's 11 years, since 2015. And I haven't spoken to him since that long either. But people do things for different reasons. Most of them are monetarily motivated. And it's a shame. It's a shame because to consider yourself or to proclaim yourself to be a victim of something that didn't happen discredits the people that it has happened to. And it's a shame. But the one thing that I do know is that truth will always prevail. And the disturbed minds of other people cannot prohibit the truth from speaking loudly. Although a lie is very loud and boisterous and quick, the truth is very slow walking. And it takes a moment, but it comes to the foreground. I just wanted to let you all know. Although this has caused much controversy and it's caused people to formulate opinions, and it's caused people to vilify and to ridicule. The one thing that I can say is I've tried my best throughout all these years to be transparent. I've tried my best and held up the standard of Christ as best I can. Flawed in many ways sometimes, but transparent. And I transparently tell you that this is all fabricated and untrue. And I'm praying for the gentleman. I'm praying for the gentleman that he would regain some kind of lucid thought and give his life to the Lord, really. And just keep me in your prayers. And that's as far as I want to go with this. And on all, it's circulated through all of the major media markets. And I didn't want to go to NBC and TMZ and People Magazine and all the other places that it's been heralded. I wanted to come straight to you. And the best way to do so is through this social media. So know this from my heart to yours. This is going to be quite interesting, but God knows, and I rely on the Lord. I rely on the Lord to bring all things to the light, and The one thing I've never done is the things that I've been accused of. Ever in my life have I done that. So keep me in your prayers. I'm going out to prayer at 7 o'clock. And you heard it from me now. I love you all. And the blood of Jesus keep you all covered. God bless you. Bye-bye.
I am going to keep my 2 cents to myself and see what actually happens in court, and then you'll hear it all from me. What I need to do is hear from you. What do you think about everything going on with Pastor Donnie McClurkin and Mr. Giuseppe Corletto? Leave a comment, and you know how we do. We'll talk about it down below. Talk to you guys later. Bye. Thanks for watching, but before you go, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any of my new episodes.